His mother wore black to my wedding, a mourning hanbok, pressed and perfect, like she was burying her son instead of watching him marry me. 32 women on his side of the family did the same. They sat in that church with their hands folded and their faces set, ready to turn my happiest day into a funeral. They had no idea there wasn't going to be a wedding today. They had no idea we'd been married for 2 weeks already. And they definitely had no idea that the company keeping their family's business alive had my last name on the letterhead. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Naomi Carter. Most people know me as Naomi Wells. I took my mama's married name because the Carter name opens doors in Atlanta, and I wanted to see if I could build something with my own 2 hands. Brand consulting, small clients, big hustle. To the outside world, I was a 28-year-old black woman working from her laptop in leggings. What the outside world didn't know was that every quarter I dialed into a board meeting for Carter and Associates, logistics and supply chain management, 250 employees, contracts with names you'd recognize. My grandmother, Big Mama, founded it from nothing. My mama runs it now, and I'd had a seat at that table since I turned 25. Baby girl, Big Mama told me the day she handed me that seat. Power doesn't need to announce itself. Let them look right past you. Makes it easier when it's time to move. I took that literally. The Saturday I met Daniel Yoon, I was working the Atlanta International Food Festival. A hot sauce brand I consulted for had a booth, and I was making sure everything ran smooth. Not a single thought about romance on my mind. Then I heard the coughing, not polite coughing, the kind where a grown man is trying not to die in public. I turned, and there he was, bent over, eyes watering. One hand braced on the booth counter while the other waved helplessly at his mouth. My vendor, Terrence, was grinning ear to ear. I told him the hot honey wasn't playing. I grabbed a carton of milk from the cooler and held it out. He took it without question and drank half of it standing up. You could have warned me before I put that on everything. His voice was hoarse, but he was smiling. I could have, but then I wouldn't have gotten to rescue you. He laughed. Something in my chest shifted. I filed that feeling away and told it to behave. Daniel Yoon. He stuck out his hand. Naomi Wells. So, which is superior? He said, still catching his breath. Korean chili flakes or Southern cayenne? Are you seriously starting this debate while you're still crying from my hot honey? Research purposes. I'm sourcing new products for my family's food company. He wiped his eyes again. I need to know where you stand before I can trust your recommendations. Cayenne, and it's not even close. That's objectively wrong. Your tears say otherwise. He laughed again, deeper this time. His eyes crinkled at the corners and I thought, oh no, this one is trouble. We talked for 45 minutes. He asked about my work, actually listened, asked follow-up questions that proved he was paying attention. He told me about Yoon International Foods, the import company his father built. He was precise where I was instinctive, controlled where I was creative, and every time I made him laugh, he looked at me like I'd done something remarkable. He asked for my number. I gave it to him before my brain could object. 3 weeks later, he took me to meet his mother. She'll love you, he said in the car, squeezing my hand. Just be yourself. The house was in Buckhead, big, immaculate, the kind of home where everything is positioned and nothing is accidental. His mother, Yoon Soo-jin, opened the door wearing a silk blouse and a smile that stopped at her cheekbones. Her eyes moved from my face to my hair to my shoes. The assessment took 2 seconds and covered everything. So, she switched from the warm tone she'd used on Daniel. This is the girl. Not a name, not a welcome. The girl. We sat at a dining table long enough for 12, but only 4 places were set. His father, Byung-ho, nodded at me once and returned to his phone. Soo-jin directed the conversation in Korean, speaking to Daniel as if I wasn't in the room. I caught fragments. The word for dark, the word for phase. Something about a mistake. Daniel's jaw tightened. He answered her in English. Mama, speak English. Naomi is our guest. Of course. Her smile returned. The cold one. Tell me, Naomi, what is it you do? Brand consulting. So, freelance. The way she said it made it sound like a disease. How nice that you have so much free time. Daniel's hand found mine under the table. He squeezed. I squeezed back. Big Mama's voice in my head, steady as a drumbeat. Never let them see you bleed, baby girl. They can't hurt what they can't reach. I smiled. It keeps me busy enough. What Mrs. Yoon didn't know, what nobody at that table knew, was that the quarterly report sitting on my desk at home had her husband's company name in it. Yoon International Foods. 40% of their product distribution ran through Carter and Associates, my family's company. The contract was up for renewal in 8 months, but some things don't need announcing. Not yet. I looked at Daniel. He looked at me like I was the only person in that room worth seeing. And, despite everything his mother had just shown me about who she was, I let myself think maybe this could work. Maybe he was worth it. I had no idea what was coming next. He called that night. 11:45, my phone buzzing on the nightstand. I almost didn't pick up. Almost. I'm sorry. His voice was quiet. The kind of quiet that means someone has been replaying a conversation for hours. She had no right to treat you like that. She's your mother, Daniel. That doesn't make it okay. A pause. She doesn't see what I see. I pulled the blanket up to my chin and stared at the ceiling. What do you see? Someone who handed a stranger milk instead of water because she actually knew what would help. Another pause, longer this time. Someone I can't stop thinking about. My heart did something reckless. I let it. Cayenne is still better than chili flakes, I said. He laughed, and the sound loosened something tight in my chest. We talked until 2 in the morning. About Atlanta, about his years at Georgia Tech, and how engineering taught him to solve problems but not people. About Big Mama's cooking, and how I learned to make cornbread before I could do long division. He told me about his grandmother in Seoul, how she used to press flowers between the pages of her recipe book and mail them to him every birthday. By the time we hung up, my cheeks hurt from smiling. Over the next 2 weeks, Soojin went to work. Not on me directly. She went to the Korean church. Daniel told me later what happened, how Mrs. Choi from the women's ministry pulled him aside after service, how she said his mother had been talking, telling everyone that some black girl had attached herself to her son, a freelancer, no family money, no real career, that I was chasing the Yoon name and whatever came with it. Gold digger. That was the word making the rounds. I sat in my apartment listening to Daniel explain this, and I thought about the board meeting I had in 6 days. 250 employees, contracts worth more than the Yoon family's entire annual revenue. And this woman was telling her church friends I was chasing her money. The irony would have been funny if it didn't sting. I'm handling it, Daniel said. His voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. I already told her if she doesn't stop, she won't hear from me for 6 months. You don't have to go to war with your family for me. Yes, he said, I do. He enforced the timeout 3 days later, after Soojin sent a group text to 6 family members calling me that dark woman who thinks she can buy her way into a Korean family. Daniel screenshot it, forwarded it to his mother with one line, 6 months starts now. Then he went quiet on his family, and he turned all of that attention to me. During those months without Soojin's interference, we breathed. We actually got to be just 2 people figuring each other out. The night he showed me his grandmother's recipe book, we were at his apartment. He pulled it from a shelf above the stove, this leather-bound book with pages so thin I was afraid to touch them. She wrote everything by hand, he said, turning the pages carefully. Some of these are 3 generations old. Pressed between the pages for teokbokki and japchae were dried flowers, paper thin and fragile as old love letters. His grandmother's handwriting filled the margins with notes. More gochugaru, less sugar. Jaewon likes it spicy. Jaewon, I said. That's your Korean name? Yoon Jaewon. He glanced at me. Nobody here calls me that. Jaewon, I said again, tasting it. His eyes softened in a way I'd never seen before. She would have liked you, he said quietly. She didn't care about any of the things my mother cares about. I touched one of the dried flowers. A cosmos, pressed flat, still holding a trace of pink. She sounds like my big mama. Maybe that's why I trust you. He was looking at me now, really looking. You remind me of the best parts of where I come from. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just held his gaze and let the silence say what words couldn't. If Soojin had any idea whose granddaughter was touching those flowers, she'd have burned that book herself, but she didn't know. None of them did. That peace lasted 3 beautiful months before the walls closed back in. Byung-ho called Daniel on a Tuesday evening. I was there. We were making dinner at his place, music playing low, and Daniel's phone lit up with his father's name. He stepped into the hallway. I could hear the tone through the wall, not the words, just the weight of them. He came back with his jaw locked, sat down at the counter, didn't touch his food. My father says if I keep seeing you, I'm done. The company, the inheritance, everything. I set down my fork. Daniel, he said I need to think about what's realistic. His voice was controlled, but his hands were tight around the edge of the counter, that I have a duty to this family, that there are expectations. And what did you say? He looked at me. I said I'd think about it. Something cold moved through my chest. He must have seen it on my face because he reached across the counter and took my hand. I said that because it buys me time, not because I'm considering it. His thumb traced a circle on my palm. I know what I want, Naomi. I believed him, but I also knew what family pressure could do to a person, even a strong one. Big Mama always said, the river doesn't break the rock by force. It breaks it by persistence. Byung-ho was persistent, and the river had just picked up speed. 2 weeks later, she appeared. Hana Park, Daniel's ex-girlfriend from college. 4 years together, the relationship his mother had adored. We were at a Yoon family gathering, a cousin's birthday that Daniel had been invited to despite the timeout with his parents. Soojin wasn't there, but her presence was everywhere. In the sidelong looks, in the whispered Korean I was learning to decode faster than anyone realized. And then Hana walked in. Beautiful, polished, Korean. Everything Soojin wanted for her son, wrapped in a designer dress and a smile aimed directly at Daniel. Danny, she crossed the room like she owned it. It's been so long. She put her hand on his arm and let it stay. Daniel stepped back. Hana, this is Naomi, my girlfriend. Hana looked at me the way you look at an obstacle you've already planned around. Oh, how nice to meet you. Her smile was porcelain, perfect and cold. Likewise, I said. Let her look. Let them all look. She spent the rest of the evening orbiting Daniel, mentioning memories I wasn't part of, laughing too loud at things that weren't funny. touching his shoulder, his arm, the back of his hand. Daniel moved away each time, but Hannah wasn't there for Daniel. She was there for me. We were together 4 years, she told me by the drinks table, her voice sweet as antifreeze. His mother still calls me. She says I'm the one who got away. She sipped her wine. Some bonds don't break, you know? I looked at her and thought about the contracts on my desk, about the logistics network that moved her precious Yoon International's products from port to shelf, about the board seat I'd held since before this woman knew Daniel's middle name. Some don't, I said, and some were never as strong as people think. She didn't know what to do with that, so she smiled harder and walked away. I didn't know yet that Hannah wasn't just showing up on her own. I didn't know that Soojin had recruited her like a soldier, that the two of them had been building something designed to blow my world apart. The screenshots came on a Thursday. Daniel was at work. I was at my apartment editing a client proposal when my phone lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize. Attached were screenshots, text messages between Daniel's phone and Hannah's, intimate messages, plans to meet during his business trip to Charlotte 3 weeks earlier, details about hotel rooms and late nights, and how much they missed each other. My hands went cold. I read every message, my chest tightening with each one. 4 weeks of conversations, pet names, plans, the kind of specificity that makes a lie feel true. I called Daniel. My voice wasn't steady. I need you to come over, now. He was there in 20 minutes. I held out my phone and watched his face as he scrolled. Confusion first, then recognition, then fury. This is fake, he said. The messages look real, Daniel. They look real because someone built them to look real. He was scrolling faster, his jaw working. Naomi, look at the dates. Look at this one. He pointed to a message from 3 weeks ago. This says I was in Charlotte on a business trip. Were you? The trip was cancelled a week before. My company pulled the budget. He looked up at me. I took those 4 days off. We went to Tybee Island together. You were there, Naomi. You were with me the entire time. The cold in my chest cracked. I remembered. The beach. The shrimp and grits at that restaurant on the pier. The sunrise walk where he told me about his grandfather. I was his alibi. Someone made fake profiles, Daniel said, his voice low and dangerous. Someone created months of fake conversations to make it look like I was cheating on you with Hannah. We both knew who someone was, your mother. He didn't deny it. He stood there in my apartment holding my phone, and I watched something shift behind his eyes. The last thread of hope that his mother might come around, might eventually accept the woman he loved. I watched it snap. 9 months, he said. She doesn't get to contact either of us for 9 months. And this time, if she tries, the clock resets to 0. He called her that night. I didn't listen. But when he came back to the living room, his eyes were red and his voice was hoarse. It's done, he said. I pulled him close. His forehead dropped to my shoulder. And for a long time, neither of us moved. Big Mama's voice in my head again. They can't hurt what they can't reach. But they were reaching. They were reaching for us both. Those 9 months were ours. Daniel proposed on month 5, on the rooftop of his apartment building at sunset, with a ring that had belonged to his grandmother, the same grandmother whose recipe book sat on his shelf, whose pressed flowers I had held in my hands. I don't need their permission, he said down on one knee. I don't need their approval. I just need you. I said yes before he finished the sentence. And for a brief, shining window, the world was exactly right. The engagement news reached Soojin through the family network, like a fire through dry grass. The 9-month timeout wasn't even over yet, but she called anyway. Daniel put her on speaker. I could hear her from across the room. You will not marry that woman. Her voice was shaking. Not with sadness, with rage. I will stop this wedding if it is the last thing I do in my life. Daniel's face was stone. The clock just reset to 0. 9 months, starting now. He hung up, but Soojin wasn't the type to go quiet. She went underground. The wedding sabotage started within weeks. She pulled the addresses off our guest list and gave Daniel's aunt a set of fake ones, hoping the invitations would bounce back too late to fix. They came back within a week. We got the real addresses from Junseo, Daniel's younger brother, the one who'd been silent through all of this, until now. He called Daniel on a Tuesday night. I was beside Daniel on the couch when the call came in. Hyung, Junseo's voice was careful. I need you to know I'm on your side. I've been on your side. What do you mean? Mama thinks I agree with her. I let her think that, but I've been watching everything. I know about the fake addresses. I know she tried to cancel the venue last week. I know she's been calling the florist pretending to be Naomi. Daniel's hand tightened around the phone. I can help, Junseo said. From the inside, she tells me everything because she thinks I'm with her. Let me be your eyes and ears. Daniel looked at me. I nodded. What has she tried? Daniel asked. The list was staggering. Cancel the venue. Change the menu from the Southern and Korean fusion we'd planned to all Korean. redirect the flower orders, contact the photographer, and claim the wedding was postponed. Every single attempt failed. The florist knew me personally, called me to confirm. The venue manager had a password we'd set up after the first incident. My vendor contacts, built over years of consulting, formed a wall she couldn't breach. Soojin was throwing everything she had at our wedding, and every shot was bouncing off. Junseo installed monitoring software on his mother's computer. He recorded her Skype calls with family members where she trash-talked me, lied about Daniel, and coordinated her campaign. He saved every email, built a folder. She doesn't know, Junseo told us, and she won't, not until you're ready. I looked at this 23-year-old kid putting himself between his mother and his brother, and I thought about my own brother Marcus at Emory Law, who would do the exact same thing for me without blinking. Family isn't blood, family is who shows up. Meanwhile, Soojin's failed sabotage attempts were becoming public embarrassments, the florist told his other clients. The venue manager mentioned it to a mutual friend. Word was spreading through Atlanta's Korean community that Mrs. Yoon was trying to destroy her own son's wedding, and the bride's people kept shutting her down. Small wins, not the big vindication, not yet, but watching her schemes crumble one by one, watching the whisper network she'd used against me start to whisper about her, I felt something quiet settle in my chest. Not revenge, just the beginning of balance. The evening after the florist's third call to confirm that no, I had not cancelled the peonies, Daniel and I sat in his kitchen. The recipe book was open on the counter. We'd been trying to make his grandmother's kimchi jjigae, and the apartment smelled like gochugaru and pork and home. Your mother tried to cancel our flowers again, I said. He closed his eyes. I know. The florist thinks it's funny at this point. He said, and I quote, "Tell Mrs. Yoon she can order her own flowers." Daniel laughed. Short and tired, but real. He leaned against the counter beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his arm against mine. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. You don't have to apologize for her." "I'm not apologizing for her. I'm apologizing that you have to deal with this at all." He turned to face me. "You deserve someone whose family celebrates you, not someone whose mother is trying to cancel your peonies." "I don't want someone whose family is perfect." I looked up at him. "I want someone who chooses me even when it's hard." His eyes moved over my face, slow, like he was memorizing it. "You have that." The kitchen was quiet, just the simmer of the stew and the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of my own heartbeat, which had picked up in a way I couldn't hide. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers brushed my jaw, stayed. "Naomi." The space between us shrank to nothing. I could see the flecks of amber in his brown eyes, could feel his breath. Then his phone buzzed on the counter. Junseo's name on the screen. Daniel exhaled, dropped his hand, picked up the phone. "Yeah." His voice was rough. I turned back to the stew and gripped the spoon like it owed me money. My heart was hammering. Close, so close. Junseo had news, more sabotage attempts, more evidence gathered, more proof of what Soojin was building. But all I could think about, standing in that kitchen with the smell of his grandmother's recipe in the air, was the feeling of his fingers on my jaw and the question in his eyes that we still hadn't answered. Soon. The answer was coming soon, and so was everything else. The answer came 2 nights later. My apartment, no sabotage news, no phone calls from family members who'd confused cruelty with concern, just us, a bottle of wine neither of us had opened, and the quiet hum of a city that didn't care about our problems. Daniel was standing at my window. I was on the couch pretending to read a client proposal, but the words kept blurring because I was watching him instead. The lamplight on his jaw, the tension in his shoulders he thought he was hiding. "You're staring," he said without turning around. "I'm reviewing a document. You've been on the same page for 12 minutes. It's a detailed page." He turned, and there it was, that look, the one from the kitchen, the one that made my pulse forget how to behave. He crossed the room, deliberate, like he'd made a decision somewhere between the window and the couch, and nothing was going to interrupt it this time. He sat beside me, took the proposal from my hands and set it on the coffee table. "Naomi?" "Daniel." His hand came up to my face, fingers along my jaw, the same path they'd traced in the kitchen before Junseo's call shattered everything. But this time, no phone buzzed, no brother called. The world, for once, stayed quiet. "I've been trying to find the right moment," he said, voice low. "But there's never going to be a perfect moment. Not with my family." "Then stop waiting for perfect." His thumb brushed my cheek. His eyes dropped to my lips. And then he kissed me, soft at first, careful, like he was asking permission with every second of contact. I answered by pulling him closer, my hand finding the back of his neck, and the kiss deepened into something that erased every ugly word his mother had ever spoken, every lie Hannah had helped build, every cold look from every Yoon family gathering. Months of warfare, and this was the moment none of it mattered except us. When we pulled apart, his forehead rested against mine, both of us breathing hard, both of us smiling. "Cayenne?" I whispered. He laughed. The sound vibrated against my lips. Still wrong. Still worth arguing about. He pulled me against his chest and I stayed there listening to his heartbeat. His chin rested on top of my head. "This is forever," he said. Not a question, A fact. This is forever, I said back. And I believed it, because whatever his family threw at us next, they'd be throwing it at something that wasn't going to break. They threw Byung-ho. 2 weeks later, Daniel's father made his move. A formal meeting at the Yoon International offices. Daniel came home looking like he'd been through a war. He gave me a deadline. He was standing in my kitchen, still in his suit, tie loosened like it had been choking him. End this in 30 days, or I'm removed from the company. No position, no shares, no inheritance, nothing. I leaned against the counter. What did you say? He looked at me, those amber-flecked brown eyes. Steady. I told him I love you. The words landed in the center of my chest. Warm, heavy, true. He asked me what was more important, a woman I've known for a few years, or the family that raised me. Daniel's voice cracked, and I told him that you are the family I'm choosing to build, that I love you, and no deadline changes that. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. I crossed the kitchen and wrapped my arms around him, and he held on like I was the only solid thing left in his world. I love you too, I said into his shoulder. You know that, right? I love you, Jae-won. His arms tightened, his face pressed into my hair. Say it again. I love you. We stood there holding each other, and I felt something shift. Not just between us, inside me. The Carter name, the board seat, the contracts. None of it mattered as much as this man choosing me over everything he'd ever known, and me choosing him right back. But the universe wasn't done testing us. Junseo called the next morning, 6:15. My phone, not Daniel's. Nuna. His voice was tight. He'd started calling me that months ago. Korean for older sister. It made my heart ache every time. I need you and Haeyoung to hear this. Can you conference him in? 3 minutes later, all 3 of us were on the line. All the women on our side of the family, every one of them. They're planning to come to your wedding in black mourning hanbok. Silence. Mourning clothes, I said. The words tasted like ash. Mama organized it. Every aunt, every cousin, every woman connected to the Yoon family. They're wearing black to your wedding, to make it clear this marriage is a funeral, that Daniel is making the biggest mistake of his life. Daniel's breathing changed. Controlled. The way someone breathes when they're holding back something that could level a building. How many? He asked. 32 women confirmed. She's been telling them you're throwing away the family honor. I sat on the edge of my bed. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from something hotter, something that started in my chest and spread outward until my whole body hummed with it. Mourning clothes. At my wedding, 32 women in black, sitting in those pews, making sure everyone in that church knew exactly what they thought of the black woman marrying their golden son. Every insult I'd absorbed. Every family dinner where I smiled through exclusion, every lie about affairs and gold digging in that dark woman. I had taken it all, maintained my dignity like Big Mama taught me. But this was different. This was not a private cruelty. This was a public execution, in front of my mother, who runs a company that employs more people than the Yoon family has ever met. In front of Big Mama, who built an empire with her bare hands. Something in me snapped, clean and sharp, like a bone breaking. Jae-won, my voice was steady, terrifyingly steady. I'm done being patient. So am I, steel wrapped in calm. Junseo, how long until the wedding? 4 months. That's enough time. And just like that, the plan was born. That same night, Daniel and I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a pot of coffee and mapped out every step. The wedding Soo-jin was trying to destroy? We'd let her have it. Let her wear her mourning clothes. Let all 32 women show up in black. Let them think they'd won, because that wedding would be fake. The real wedding would happen 2 weeks before, at the Fulton County Courthouse, with my family and Junseo as witnesses. No Yoons except the one who'd earned the right to be there. And at the fake wedding, while Soo-jin sat in her black hanbok, feeling victorious, we would play a DVD. Every piece of evidence Junseo had gathered, every Skype call, every email, every lie, every racist remark, every scheme laid bare for the entire church to see. Then my father would take the altar, and he would tell them exactly who they'd spent years trying to destroy. Junseo, Daniel said into the phone, how's that evidence folder? Growing every day, Hyung. She doesn't stop talking. Good. Keep recording. My brother Marcus will help compile it. He's at Emory Law. He'll make sure everything is airtight. I looked at Daniel across the table. We have to act normal. 4 months of pretending nothing has changed. Can you do that? I've been doing it since the day I met your mother. He almost smiled. After the fake wedding, I'm done with the company. I walk away from everything. Inheritance, position, all of it. You don't have to. I want to. I want to choose you in front of everyone who told me not to. And then I want to watch my father realize that the company keeping his business alive has your name on it. We told my family the next day. Mama listened with her CEO face, the one that boardrooms feared. When I finished, she nodded once. We'll handle the speech. Raymond and I will coordinate with your father. Big Mama sat in her chair, hands folded, eyes sharp. Baby girl, I taught you that power doesn't need to announce itself. She paused. But sometimes it needs to show up and sit down at the table. The 4 months were the hardest of my life. Not the planning, the pretending. Going through motions of a wedding we knew would never happen. Tasting cakes, confirming seating charts, letting Soo-jin's sabotage continue so she wouldn't suspect we we'd change the game. Daniel and I were together every night, but to the outside world, we looked like a couple buckling under pressure. Playing a double game takes something out of you that sleep can't fix. Some nights I wondered if the cost was worth the toll, whether we could just walk away, move to another city, start fresh. Then I'd remember 32 women in black, and the doubt would burn away like fog in morning sun. 2 weeks before the fake wedding, we stood in the Fulton County courthouse. Me in a white sundress, Daniel in a gray suit, my mama, Uncle Raymond, Big Mama in her wheelchair, with a corsage pinned to her collar, Marcus with the rings, and Junseo standing on the groom's side because he'd earned that spot. The judge said the words. Daniel said, "I do." I said, "I do." Junseo wiped his eyes. Big Mama said, "About time." And just like that, I was Naomi Yoon, legally, quietly, on our terms. Daniel kissed me in that courthouse, and it tasted like the beginning of everything we'd been fighting for. Behind us, my family smiled. Beside us, Junseo took a photo, and somewhere in Buckhead, Soojin was pressing her black mourning hanbok for a wedding that no longer existed. 2 weeks of acting like a couple falling apart when we were already married. Daniel moved into a hotel. We told people the pressure had gotten to us, that maybe his family was right. Soojin called Junseo to celebrate. I knew he would come to his senses. Junseo recorded it, added it to the folder. The separation was strategic, every piece calculated, but that didn't make it painless. The doubt on people's faces, the satisfaction in Soojin's voice, watching Daniel carry the weight of pretending to abandon the woman he'd just married. I sat in my apartment those nights with my ring on a chain around my neck, hidden under my shirt, and I whispered what Big Mama said the day she gave me my board seat. Let them look right past you. Makes it easier when it's time to move. The time to move was almost here. The morning of the fake wedding, I woke up in Savannah with my husband's arm around me and my ring where it belonged, on my finger, not hidden. We propped his laptop on the hotel bed and logged into Junseo's live feed. The church filled our screen, white flowers, candles, and there they were, 32 women in black mourning hanbok, filing into the pews like a funeral procession. Soojin led them, spine straight, chin high. She sat in the front row and folded her hands. She looked victorious. The officiant stepped to the microphone. The wedding party will be slightly delayed. In the meantime, please enjoy this presentation the couple has prepared. The screen behind the altar flickered to life. The florist. Mrs. Yoon called 4 times pretending to be the bride. She tried to cancel every arrangement. The venue manager. She attempted to cancel the reservation twice. The caterer. She tried to change the entire menu. Remove every southern dish. Then Junseo's recordings began. Soojin's own voice filled that church. She's nothing. A freelancer. No family, no money, no future. My son is throwing his life away on that dark woman. I told Hana to show up at the birthday. Let Naomi see what a real Korean woman looks like. The invitations? I gave them fake addresses. By the time they figure it out, it'll be too late. And the last recording, 2 weeks ago, when she thought she'd won. I knew he would come to his senses. That woman was never going to be part of this family. Soojin's face. I will never forget it. The color drained in stages. Lips first, then cheeks, then everything. White the way paper goes white when you hold it to a flame, right before it catches. She lunged toward the screen. 3 men stepped into the aisle, calm, immovable. They walked her back to her seat. Her hands shook so hard her rings rattled against the pew. The screen went dark. Uncle Raymond walked to the altar. My name is Raymond Carter, Chief Operating Officer of Carter and Associates. We manage logistics and supply chain contracts across the Southeast. He paused. One of those companies is Yoon International Foods. 40% of your product distribution runs through our network. The contract is up for renewal in 2 months. Byung-ho's head snapped up. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. The woman your family spent years calling a gold digger, a nobody, a dark woman, is my niece, Naomi Carter, board member since she was 25. Silence. The kind that has weight. There will be no wedding today. Daniel and Naomi were married 2 weeks ago. They are on their honeymoon right now watching this. The screen lit up one final time. Daniel's face, pre-recorded the night before, in our hotel room. I chose Naomi. I chose her when my mother called her names. I chose her when my father threatened my career. I chose her when 32 women agreed to wear black to our wedding, like our marriage was something to mourn. He looked into the camera. I would choose her again, every single time. And if the cost of loving her is losing all of you, I've already done the math. Uncle Raymond returned to the microphone. When they return, there will be no contact with any of you for 1 year. Any attempt resets that person's clock to 0. I suggest you use the year to reflect. Soojin, head bowed, hands in her lap. The black hanbok she'd pressed for this moment hung on her like a shroud. Around her, 32 women in mourning clothes sat in a church where there was nothing left to mourn except their own choices. I closed the laptop. Daniel pulled me against his chest. I pressed my face into his shoulder. Not triumph, not gloating, just the feeling of a woman whose name was finally spoken out loud in a room full of people who'd refused to learn it. Big Mama was right. Power doesn't need to announce itself, but sometimes it needs to show up and sit down at the table. A year is a long time when nobody is trying to destroy your life. We rented a cottage in Savannah with a kitchen big enough for us both to cook without bumping elbows. Daniel found consulting work on the coast. I picked up new clients. We made his grandmother's recipes on Sundays and mine on Wednesdays. And somewhere between the kimchi jjigae and the shrimp and grits, we stopped surviving and started building. Junseo visited every month. Methodical as always, he sat with every aunt and cousin who'd worn black or stayed silent, opened his laptop, and showed them the recordings, the emails, the timeline of every lie Soojin had told. One by one, the calls came, sheepish, quiet, the kind where someone clears their throat 3 times before speaking. We didn't know. She told us things that weren't true. We're sorry. I listened to each one, did not pretend it didn't matter. It mattered that 32 women wore mourning clothes to my wedding, and it mattered that most were brave enough to say they'd been wrong. Byung-ho came in month 9. He flew to Savannah, stood on our porch with his shoulders lower than I'd ever seen them. We sat him at the kitchen table. He looked at Daniel first, then at me. I was a coward. His knuckles were white. I let her do what I should have stopped. I used the company as a weapon against my own son. He turned to me. Naomi, I'm sorry. For every dinner where I said nothing. For the threats. For looking the other way. I'm not asking forgiveness today. I'm asking you to let me earn it. Big Mama's voice, clear as Sunday morning. Grace isn't weakness, baby girl. You can earn it, I said. Starting now. He met with Mama the following week. Dr. Patricia Carter-Wells across her mahogany desk. Marcus told me Byung-ho bowed before he sat down and never once mentioned the contract. Mama renewed it anyway. He came as a father, she said. That's the only reason he left with anything. Soojin never called. She tried to spin the DVD as betrayal by her own sons, but the evidence was too thorough. 80% of the family cut contact. The woman who built a network of whispers found herself outside every conversation. What I felt wasn't joy. It was the absence of weight, a door closing on a room I never had to enter again. On a Saturday in October, we held a vow renewal in Big Mama's backyard. No church, no grand venue, just the people who earned the right to be there. Mama in lavender, Uncle Raymond with a speech he swore he wouldn't cry through and absolutely did. Big Mama in her chair, corsage pinned to her collar. On Daniel's side, Byung-ho, present for his son's happiness for the first time. Junseo as best man, where he belonged. The guest list was small. The love in that yard was not. Daniel took my hands under string lights. I already married you, he said, voice cracking just enough to sting my eyes. But I'd do it again, tomorrow, every day after, cayenne and all. I laughed through tears. Chili flakes aren't terrible. Most romantic thing you've ever said. Don't push it, Jaewon. His grandmother's ring slid back on my finger, warm from Junseo's palm. Big Mama said, loud enough for the whole yard. About time. Again. Daniel returned to Yoon International on his terms. Byung-ho stepped aside. Naomi Carter Yoon holds a board seat, not because of the contract, because she earned it. We live in Decatur now, close enough that Big Mama complains about our lawn. Pressed flowers from his grandmother's recipe book hang framed on the kitchen wall, next to the vow renewal photo, next to the ultrasound we pinned up last Tuesday. Soojin sends a card at New Year. Daniel reads them, doesn't respond. The door isn't locked. She hasn't found the courage to knock. Some evenings, when the house is quiet, I rest my hand where the baby kicks and think about Big Mama's words from the day this all started. Let them look right past you. Makes it easier when it's time to move. They looked right past me, and I built a life so bright they'll never look away again.